Make feedback normal, not a performance review. This is a quote by the great Ed Batista. Now, what does it mean? And why are we talking about it today? Feedback is one of those critical pieces of leadership, the ability to hold your employees accountable and so that they know when and how to deliver on expectations. This is so valuable. Remember one of my very first experiences with feedback, I had a leader and the leader sat me down. And again, for those of you who know me, you know I'm a little bit of an intense personality, very passionate. Leader sat me down and said, "So we love what you're doing. You're doing a great job. The guests love you. The employees love you. Everything's going really well. I have one request." "Okay, yeah, absolutely. How can I help?" "We need you to just be a little bit less." "Okay, happy to do that. I'm just not sure what that means. Can you give me an example?" No, I don't really have an example. We need you to be a little bit less you. Does that help?" No, that does not help. That experience has stuck with me to the point that I can remember the decorations in his office. I can remember the smells that were happening that day of the food and the beverage and everything that was going on because it was burned into my memory. I was so frustrated when I left that meeting, and so was he, because we both knew that I wasn't delivering, but I didn't know how to get there, and he knew I didn't know how to get there, so I wasn't going to get there. And it wasn't until many, 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 many years later when I worked with, it was at Disney, I worked with a cast member, a lot like me, that I realized what he was trying to ask. And I also realized it was a very, very difficult ask to make of somebody. But you see, leadership isn't all about the fun and the building morale and planning things and just making sure operationally that you have the products in place to deliver the service. Leadership takes place whenever you have these conversations and you help build that environment to where your employees know that if they're not performing, you're going to tell them. You're going to do it in a respectful and professional way, but you're going to tell them. You're not going to let them fail. If you think about the best leaders that you have ever worked for, there was probably that sense of trust. That same sense of trust that we have with that friend that will tell us if our zipper's down or that we have broccoli in our teeth. We know that they have our back. And even if it's uncomfortable for them to tell us, "Hey, you got a little something," they're still going to do it. They put their comfort below helping us and making sure that we don't fail. When we avoid giving feedback, when we avoid accountability, there's so many negative consequences to that. It breeds mistrust and drama. And one of my favorite Brene Brown quotes is that leaders must either invest a reasonable amount of time attending to fears and feelings, or squander an unreasonable amount of time trying to manage ineffective and unproductive behavior. Another quote that I always appreciated was by Steve Jobs. A players want to work with A players. And one of the quickest ways to run off your A players is to let your D and F players do whatever they want with no consequences. Chances are, if you're in leadership, that means that you're a high performer, which also means that there's probably been a time in your past where a leader, before you were in leadership, a leader may have taken advantage of that to where somebody called in. "Oh, I can call Joe. He'll always come in." Somebody ended up just being a no-call, no-show. "Oh, Joe will stay." There's a really difficult project that's coming up. "Oh, Joe can do that on top of everything that he's already doing." And we end up burning out our A players, and they're watching us as we are not holding our below performance employees accountable. After a while, they're gonna leave. So when we avoid these difficult conversations, when we avoid creating that environment of mistrust, that is when the seventh deadly sin of leadership kicks in. The seventh deadly sin is a lack of accountability, a lack of feedback. As a leader, we need to be there for all of the good things, but we also need to be able to have these conversations. And I will tell you, in the beginning, when you're first trying this out, it's uncomfortable. One of these episodes, I'm not ready yet, but one of these episodes, I will tell you about the time that I told the wrong employee that they had body odor. And then I had to go back and fix it when I realized it wasn't that employee. It was a different one. But the more you give feedback, it's like a muscle. The more you give feedback, the more you have these conversations, the better, smoother, easier it will be for you. But as a leader, it's our job. Step out of your comfort zone and do what's right for your employees. Thank you for joining me for the final installment of the 7 deadly sins of leadership. We wrapped up with 7th deadly sin, lack of accountability and lack of feedback. And next week, we will be reminiscing through all of the 7 sins. So as a recap, have a wonderful week. I can't wait to see you next week. Don't forget, you got this.